Hey, welcome to Book Nerds, a book club for Doctora entrepreneurs, the podcast where we explore top books on leadership, business, and personal growth to help doctors and practice owners build thriving practices and fulfilling careers. I'm Dr. Kyle Clutie, joined by my esteemed co-host, Dr. Brianna Rue, and shortly joining us, Dr. Aaron Werner. Each month, we break down an inspiring book, challenge each other with fresh ideas, and share actionable insights to help you lead better, work smarter, and hopefully live well. So, this week, Brianna, we are jumping into Jim Collins, his book, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. This is this one I've got right here, Turning Your Business into an Enduring Great Company. I'm going to dive right into a question. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. There's Aaron.
Hey, I made it.
Welcome.
It's been a day of calls. I apologize.
No worries. I've got a question for you too. So page 5, he talks about page 5 and 6. Let's see here. Jim Collins talks about the irreversible leap. So if you spend your life keeping your options open, that's exactly what you'll do. Spend your life keeping your options open. So he talks about when he's reflecting on a time where he was a professor of entrepreneurship at, I think, Stanford, right? And he was dreaming of switching that around and saying, hey, I want to be not a professor of entrepreneurship. I want to be an entrepreneurial professor. So I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to start my own business, consulting business, and I'm going to become an entrepreneur myself, and then teach other entrepreneurs what I'm learning, right? Instead of being in academia. So, and he calls it like the irreversible leap. So at some point, you just have to say, hey, I'm putting all my cards on the table. I'm doing this. I'm jumping in. So I would imagine that we've all had that experience before, right?
Yeah.
So let's all share, like, did you have moments like that in the past, whether it was for your practice or for some endeavor that you've been a part of? Like, what would be an example of an irreversible leap that you've experienced?
Yeah, and before I answer the question, the irreversible leap, he says, it's the time that you must commit at a crucial moment. And if you don't fully commit, your odds of success almost go to zero versus your odds of success increasing.
Yep.
And it's a scary point to be, and we've all been on that cliff to either, I'm a cliff pusher too. Like, I push people off of cliffs. I've done this to many of my friends. Like, go build your little practice birdie fly. Like, build it on the way up before you have to build your airplane. That's the joke, is like, build your airplane as you're falling off the cliff, and you have to, build it before you hit the bottom. So mine obviously was buying in to the practice. I remember a very clear moment where we weren't coming to an agreement in the negotiation. And I said, well, you want X, the bank's willing to give me Y. I'm not coming up with the difference. It's all cash flow. I'm not making up the rules. So cancel my patients for the rest of the week and come back to me. And I don't think if I had and I walked out of the door, I actually went to yoga that night. And I'm a good namasteer, right? Or like meditate on answers that you want. And he called me back while I was in yoga. I didn't answer it, but I called him back and he said, you've got yourself a deal.
Wow.
And then that happened again, obviously, with Dr. Contact Lens. Like, how hard could it be to build something of this nature? Well, joke's on me. Very hard. And it's exciting that we're having this call after exchange. But again, you've got to go all in. It's just burning the boat. And if nobody knows what that is you can keep one foot in, 1 foot out, and you have always like that scapegoat. But until was it George Washington that burned the boats?
Yeah, I think so.
In history?
Yeah, I think so.
So they had to what's the story?
I think they took all the boats down. They basically sailed, if I remember right, they sailed into Redcoat territory behind the enemy lines, if you will, and then they burned their boats that they sailed down, so they had to fight their way back out. They basically got rid of the easy escape plan So they were committed to the action, and they either won or died,
And they ended up winning.
and they ended up winning.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
love that you
awesome.
just said, Brianna, that when you've got 1 foot in, that's also 1 foot out, right? So while
Hmm.
you think you're testing the water, you're also leaving the water at the same time, right? So it's we like to tell ourselves that we're committing when that act of like partially committing is also the same act of partially uncommitting to what we're doing. And I'll go way back to 25-year-old Aaron when I remember I was dating someone and feared a commitment, and I was like, well, dude, I kind of want to go all in, but not sure, and do I all in by just like do I have one, is she my girlfriend now, and we're not talking marriage yet, we're just talking, do I date one person, and a friend of mine says, look, like if you keep trying to look at the open door, like you're always going to have these. You're not going to get anything. You're just going to keep sitting there looking and waiting for the next best and waiting for the next best and waiting for the next best. And you've got to just jump. And, thankfully it wasn't a, you die or you win type situation like George Washington's troops. But you ride that experience, that ride, take that adventure for as long as it goes. And then if you need to make changes, you do. Yoda said it best, do or do not, there is no try. So like, if you're gonna jump in with a buying a piece of equipment at the exchange, right? Buy the equipment, and then be committed. You're gonna make sure this is successful. You're gonna make sure it works,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be, right? If you're gonna sign up with Dr. Contact Lens, like we did, you go all in, right? And you don't try to pick apart different pieces. You say this is what we are doing, and we're gonna give it our full effort for whatever time you tee up, and then you realize the benefits then once you've gone all in.
I wrote in my notes right here, I said, comfort makes it more difficult to leap.
Mm-hmm.
So the more comfortable you are, and that comfort is dangerous, especially in where we are right now. I feel like I'm a Flintstone living in a Jetsons world a lot of the times. You're like, oh my God, when is this stuff going to slow down? It's not. So it's just, again, finding your community. What was yours, Kyle?
I
Your
think I
ride or
like what you
die
said.
moment.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said too, Aaron. There's mini leaps and then there's big leaps. When I think about like, I like the word irreversible because it makes me think, when you make some big decision, at the end of the day, you kind of have to be ready to take on the hard parts of that decision.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think one of them for me, there's a handful. Uh, One of them that is most recent is when I bought the second location, and I had kind of gone back and forth for years on that, and we had negotiated that second location for quite a while, 8 9 months, and it came down to am I ready to take on all of the problems? Am I ready to take on the overhead, which are the problems and the issues of that practice from now on, right? Am I ready to take on all those things better for worse? And at some point I was like, yeah, I actually am. I'm ready to do that. And I think that was where I made the irreversible leap of, okay, yep, let's settle on a price. This is what we're going to do. And it didn't make it like having a second location is kind of just doubling your work in optometry. Like there's not a lot we can scale, at least the size of my two practices. Um, you know, Scalability is better like 3 to 5, I would say, or if you have, because they're two single location practices, or single like 1 to 2 doctor practices. So there's not a lot of scalability there. So I kind of I knew, hey, I'm doubling my work, but that's okay. But this was the step I wanted to take in order to continue that path of growth, and I'm glad I did. But and I also think back to the time when I bought the first location too, where I had an opportunity there that was presented to me, and I wasn't practicing by myself. I was in a group practice. I've been in a number of different locations, different practices, and I was like, okay, finally feel like it's time where I need to, have my own stamp on things, to create things from scratch. I really yearned for that. So that was my irreversible leap. But I think there's many ones all the time. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
making just like you said, we come off Exchange, Vision Source Exchange, and how many great, pieces of equipment are there, how many great pieces of software are there. How do you decide to make that leap into what's next? Because, you know, I want to add everything to my practice, but because you can see value, but then at the end of the day, like it's tiring to add things. You got to train, you got to do all those things, you got to handle the overhead of it.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but yeah, I think every couple weeks there's mini leaps.
Oh yeah. I like what Brianna said about comfort. I gave a lecture on meta, and part of that lecture was making friends with the what if monster, right? Because our what if monster keeps us safe, keeps us comfortable, right? It keeps bad things from happening. But when you make friends with it, it no longer says, well, what if bad things happen? Don't try it. What if it doesn't work out? It starts saying, well, what if it does? It's just the opposite side of the same coin. And what if it does work out? It still says it might not, but you focus on the upsides and the possibilities, and so you're willing to take that risk, take that chance, try, because the what if becomes a positive what if as opposed to a negative what if. And then when you said comfort, Brianna, it made me think every sports car I've ever been in has been the single most uncomfortable ride of my life, right?
Yeah.
Ferraris are uncomfortable, Porsches are uncomfortable. Like I have not been in a comfortable sports car. And then the comfort cars I've been in, yeah, they've been comfortable, but like there's been nothing fancy about them. The car people are going to start yelling at me in a minute, but right, the cooler and the faster and like the more adventurous and exciting you go, like you give up a lot of those little comforts.
Yeah, for sure.
And I
Let's
like
go
what you
through.
said,
I was going to
kind of
introduce the book a little
the
bit.
piece. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So
It's
we
huge.
introduced
It's
the
a
book a little bit.
gigantic book. We could talk for like
It's a
4
huge book.
hours on this book.
So a little bit of a summary for the optometrists out there, the listeners that don't know about it. Basically, this is, if you've heard of the book Good to Great, Jim Collins is, like we said before, he's an entrepreneurial professor. So he basically, he has a consulting and he does a ton of research on what makes good companies go to great companies. So he's got the classic book, Good to Great, and it's how to build an enduring great company. So he's got several books. I think was his first originally that he wrote, he co-authored, and then he wrote 3 or 4 other ones, and he's responsible for, the concepts that we probably all heard, like level 5 leadership, embrace the genius of the first who, then what, confront the brutal facts, all those things. What I think, the reason why I think everybody should be reading this is because it's like just foundational baseline business entrepreneurship knowledge, right? In my mind, like all optometry students should be given a copy of this. And even if they're not going to be entrepreneurs or even if they're not going to be practice owners, like there's just so much packed into here that allows you to understand just your role as a leader and how to build a great enduring company, whether you're leading that company or whether you're just part of a company and helping that. So that's my 2 cents. I just wanted to get that across. So sorry to interrupt, Brianna. Go for it.
No, I love that. I needed that too, to get it back. So one of the very part of the book, and I think what healthcare has really made this all about, is he says you can go at life as a series of transactions or you can go at life building relationships. So healthcare has become very transactional. And I was just listening to the podcast about Epic, which was on Acquired. And it's a 4-hour listen on how Epic became what it was. And it was built by a woman back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like she had to get $70,000 for the big computer. And it does feel very transactional, and it's not healthcare anymore, but that's what healthcare really is. And so the community, right, coming off of the exchange, there's a community there, but there's also curiosity. And what this is doing with this book is, in here he says, if you ask each person in a relationship who benefits more from the relationship, both people would answer, I do.
I love that.
So going through the exhibit halls when you meet up, like Kyle and I met for the very first time, and it's just so cool what technology has enabled. Same thing when I met Aaron. You can build these communities so coolly now over things like this and sharing knowledge. But it was really curiosity. We have to get back to that. because we are what are driving our practices forward. And he went into the next section of the book is understanding your vision, your mission, and your core values.
Yep.
So my team at West Broward was, they're getting a little squirrely, right? Because I separate time. So when I'm here at Dr. Contact Lens, they weren't where I am. When I'm off traveling, I was gone for 8 days. Thank you to my hubby for holding the fort down. But it comes down to passion, right? And if you're not passionate about it, why are you doing it? So I went in with this vision, mission, core values. The vision, or the vision is like you're never going to get there. It's way out there. It's the mountain range so far that you're never going to hit it, and it should outlive you. So West Broward being in its second generation, like I went through this with my dad, having to shut down his business, right? And it's all that knowledge, just you see it disintegrate, and that vision should outlive you. So with West Broward Eye Care, why did he create it? And we got back to that why. It was to be family oriented, treat everybody like family, charge them correctly because we have a business.
Yep.
And then your missions are your little mountains that you're climbing. So like for Dr. Contact Lens, getting to the exchange, that was mountain one, right? Getting an integration with Eyefinity, that was another mountain. So the little mountains, you go up and down the mountains, because if you stay too high at the top of the mountain, you either run out of oxygen if you're climbing up there to Mount Everest, right? You can't stay at the top too long, or you freeze.
Yep.
And then your core values all align with that. And we've talked a lot about core values, but I love that summary of the vision, mission, values for your practice.
Yep. I like that too, and being in from San Diego, a lot of my friends are military, and so when I was reading that section, it made me remember that while we're fighting a war, whatever your war is, and in this case we'll talk literal war, most of my friends are special forces or ex-special forces, so they had missions they would go on. So their job wasn't to win the war, their job was just to win this mission. Right, whether it's a nighttime raid, or I'm going to go capture somebody, or I'm going to go rescue a hostage. You had one goal in mind on that little job, and that mission helped to achieve the bigger overall goal of winning the war. But it also meant that if you didn't succeed on that one, you didn't lose everything either. Right, you just kept trying and focusing on the little piece. The other thought that just crossed my mind, Kyle, you talked about that irreversible leap, and we all related it to buying something quickly. Right. But when you're part of the community, part of that irreversible leap is being vulnerable. You can't be part of a community if you're not vulnerable. And sometimes that irreversible leap is saying, I'm going to let people see inside because my practice isn't always going well. I'm not always doing really good. I have staff problems. While I might be up on stage giving a really nice polished lecture, like I'm having the same problems I'm talking about. So it's not like I'm better than you or whatnot. And that's what's cool about communities, true communities, when you can say, hey, I need help, right? Or I've got these 3 options, help me figure out where to go. Showing that little bit of vulnerability, I think that's a huge leap for a lot of our colleagues in the industry, because we want to be correct. We were taught to be correct. And not being correct or having vulnerabilities kind of goes against everything we were taught through 8 years of school of just, you have the right answer constantly. Right, you got to be right. You got to be right. 1 or 2. It's always 3.
Yeah, I think that's good, Aaron. I think one of the things that I kind of feel bad about sometimes when I lecture, as you know, I can't not talk about James Clear's Atomic Habits and identity and actions. Right, I just can't not. No matter what I talk about, I have to have that slide. And I'm sure people are so tired of it at this point because they come to,
if StoryBrand taught us anything, they have to hear it 80 times.
Yep.
For sure. And I'm guessing some people are like, okay, this is the 17th time that Kyle has said this before. But
only 62 more.
I have to be reminded of it all the time too. But the thing that I miss that I left out of there, like if you're to really think about how do you change your behavior, and what does the science say? What does the research say? What are the components of true behavior change and organizational change? It's not just mindset, which is identity, right? and actions. Like I always give that slide of how identity and actions, identities, basically underlie the beliefs or the actions, and the actions reinforce beliefs. It's those two components, but actually the third thing that has to coincide with those two things is actually community. Because if you couple identity, action, and vulnerability, I'm getting some my thumbs up. I got two
The
thumbs
dual
up. I
thumbs
got
got you fireworks, right?
all the fireworks in the background here. This is fantastic.
You can tell
I was
Kyle's on
thinking
an
maybe
apple.
apparently I was thinking maybe AI was just thinking I was saying such profound
You
words,
are
so it
that
gave me
good,
these
Kyle. That's where I
awesome
was
Did you
going.
give the
That's what I
double
thought.
thumbs up? Kyle.
but really I just gave it to myself. But anyhow, community, fellowship, however you want to talk about vulnerability with other people, like that, that's unstoppable. When you've approached change from changing your mindset, figuring out the actions that reinforce that mindset, and then you do that in community with other people like you that can hold you accountable to it. Like you're not going to not change, right? You're definitely going to improve, whether you're thinking about something personally or professionally at your practice. So I love that community
Yeah.
component there.
Well, that ties right back into the first chapter of the book where he talks about great people, right? You can't
Mm,
have you can't have a successful community without good people who are contributing. And I love that his simple line where he says teachers are paid to stand in a classroom for 6 hours, but that's not their job, is to stand in the classroom for 6 hours, right? Their job is clearly significantly much more than that: to engage, to teach, to inspire, to support, all of the above. Um, so I think that's where taking all the different books that we read and seeing how they overlap, right? Because it's the community and it's the great people, but it's the engagement of those people in that community that collectively makes it better. It's the engagement of the people in your business, that make it better. And I mean, staff is the number one headache we have, but I also think it's the number one source I go for solutions when I have some too. I might have to
for
filter it
sure.
out slightly differently, but they're the more they engage in our community, then the better we are collectively, and ultimately the better we take care of patients, and the better financially we are as well.
Yeah, he talks a lot about who luck, and all of us definitely
I love that.
have who luck.
Hmm.
The other thing he brings up here is he says history, and I know a lot of us here, like as you read, a lot of this is just historical lessons. And he says history is just the study of surprises. It's that uncertainty is chronic, instability is permanent, disruption is common, and we can neither predict nor govern events. There will be no new normal. So remember when 2020 hit and we're like, this is the new normal.
Normal,
Like
yeah.
nails on a chalkboard. Remember when anybody would say that? But like, what was normal before that?
Nope.
I can't even tell you. Like, look at all the things that we changed for the better in that moment. But we were all forced
Yep.
to do that. And I'll be honest, like doctor contact lens probably would not have survived because the normal in that point was, oh, I don't need this. My patients want to come back and pick up their contacts. Oh, I don't need this. My patients are ordering from me. Oh, I don't need this because I have all these staff members that are my minions that will do all this for me.
Yep.
So look at all the things that put us all, I mean, we don't have to go through another one of those events to change a little bit faster.
Please no.
But everyone's like, please don't.
Although every
But
time,
that's where we generated something.
yeah. Although every time something bad happens, that's where we had our biggest spike in
Breakthroughs.
revenue afterwards, or rather growth, right? After 2008, the because we were forced to analyze what we were doing and do it more efficiently and do it smarter. COVID was our biggest growth percentage coming out of that. And then right now with the tariffs forcing us, at the exchange this week, I had my entire team go back and relook at all of our fee structure. We've been looking at our efficiencies. We started tracking what we're calling time to optical. So when a patient checks in to the time we get them to the optical, looking at all the different metrics within the business, which we don't do when things are good. Right? When things are good and I'm
Right.
there's money in the bank and I'm feeling like I'm great, I'm gonna go buy a couple new pairs of Sambas because why not? Right? I've got a shoe addiction. It's bad.
Sambas. I used to wear Sambas. They're good.
It was on clouds, now went to Sambas, and we'll see where it goes next. Yeah, my wife's gonna sit and start an intervention here soon. But when things are good, they're good, and we internalize that as we're good. But when things are bad, I think that little bit of a panic helps us to go back and reevaluate. But that's where we have our biggest growth. So it's interesting when we're forced to have that irreversible leap of I got to focus and redo things versus when we choose to proactively kind of do that to ourselves. Weight's the same. I hit 205 coming out of the exchange and said, okay, time to watch my diet and start being more consistent in exercise again. So it's which I should have done a long time before, but that's a different discussion.
There was a fun
Good
moment,
stuff.
Aaron, at the exchange where, is it Carissa, the 4th-year student?
Yeah, she's awesome. Carissa.
So we were talking about like cold starting versus buying entities, buying those things, and how many opportunities many people, like it's like buying a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can walk in and someone thinks that they've done this house impeccably well, but you're going to go in and change the paint. You're going to go in and do these little things that you want to do. So opportunities are hiding in plain sight. One of the Brene Brown things right now is the worst thing that you can do right now is have an idea. So in the face of AI, right, everybody's like, this is going to change their life. I'm going to make a business out of this. A lot of AI companies have already blown through hundreds of millions of dollars, not even to see the daylight of the market. And so I think right now is just sticking. So Dan Martell, big Dan Martell guy, what focus means is follow one course until successful. And that's in this book is when you, as a leader, whoa, my light went off. When you take care of people, your career will follow. And your career, right? You can't spell career without care.
Yep.
And that's all that this is. It's finding fun in the mundane. It's finding that next thing, but making that decision with your people behind you.
Making it and then living it. I really liked the part of the book where he compares Gandhi and Churchill as great leaders, but how different leaders they were. I think sometimes at least I did for a long time, as I would see, Kyle, you do something and say, okay, well, I want to do that for my team. And then I'd see Brown to do something different. And then I want to do that for my team. And I didn't know who I was as a leader. And so I ended up being a boat without a course or a rudder. And that had a negative influence on my team. And it wasn't until I said, okay, here's how my leadership structure, here's my focus, here's where I want to go. Because then it was a whole lot easier for the team to get in line behind me. And it was easier to say yes to the things that helped us and no to the things that might be great, just not part of our journey.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. I've got have this page open for a little while. Page 43. I've got it double starred, which means I really liked it the first time I read it. But double starred and underlined here. So true leadership only exists. Yeah.
How
True
did
leadership.
all of those 2 pages did we only
I know.
do
That's
the
right.
same
See,
sentence?
right there. I've got the whole paragraph underlined
that
there.
double
So
star.
it was just feeling it. Anyhow, true leadership only exists if people follow when they would otherwise have the freedom to not follow. I think I'm going to read that again because it takes a little bit to wrap your mind around that. True leadership only exists if people follow when they would otherwise have the freedom to not follow. Many business leaders think they're leading when in fact they're simply exercising power, and they might discover to their horror that no one would follow them if they had no power. If you rely primarily on rank or title or position or money or incentives or celebrity or any other form of raw power to get things done, quite simply, you've abdicated leadership. Oof.
Ouch.
The Myopia Collective. CooperVision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today.
In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the LifeMeter has been a game changer. The LifeMeter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, LifeMeter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. Yeah. How do you know as a leader? Because it's easy for us when I'm following somebody to say if they're a good leader or not. Right? It's easy for me to look up and say, you're the type of leader that I would follow otherwise, or I'm only doing this because you're my boss or whatever reason. But if you're the person in leadership, if you are that person, how do you know if you're leading because you're influencing properly and people would normally follow you, or if you're leading using one of these other third-party tools, if you will, as the incentive for people to follow you?
That is a great question.
I think part of it is like your brain and your heart, right? So like that 13 inches between your brain and your heart, where the other part of this book, it says leadership is the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. And he also says that it's not for money, right? So if you're, that's, I think, Aaron, right there. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But when you show up day in and day out to get the work done, so are you leading because there's a monetary gain, or are you leading from passion and your heart? Mm-hmm. That might be something to look at. Look at your longtime employees. You can't keep giving them these raises. You can do bonuses and spiffs and stuff like that. But many of us have employees and team members that have been with us 25 years. So do they feel part of something bigger than them? Does their vision fit into your vision? And your vision has to be so far out there that everybody's vision can fit into it.
That fits in. So how do you know, you've got that 20-year employee, how do you know what actions do they take, what behaviors do they have that have bought in, that they're following you, they're following the vision, they feel like they're a part of this?
Mine is they feel heard and they feel cared for. So like we go back to 2020, right? Mm-hmm. Where I didn't know if we were going to make payroll, right? Yep. But I keep so much in the business because I live in Florida, so who knows, knock on wood, maybe there's not a hurricane that knocks us down for 3-4 weeks, right? So we always sit on a crazy amount of cash for certain things. So that was my moment to know all these people took care of me for all those years, and that was my moment to take care of them. When a lot of my friends were like, instantly, lights are shut off, everybody go home, you're not getting paid. So I think it's reciprocity, reciprocation.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Kyle, what do you think? Did Kyle freeze on us?
I think he's frozen.
Kyle froze.
Let it go.
You got a good voice. I've only heard your rap voice. That was good. Yeah. I like when my team comes with ideas. So when they feel comfortable enough to bring me new ideas, that's kind of my checkbox that says they're bought in, right? They're trying to engage more. They want to proactively contribute. It's when they get really quiet and they don't have ideas is when I feel like they're not fully bought in, right? They're just there because I signed their paycheck. And so I look at that as a reflection not of how much they want to engage, but of how well I'm leading.
And I bet when they do come to you with an idea, you're not instantly, oh, that's a great idea, but, or that's a terrible idea,
Yeah,
right?
I try to not comment on. I try to let them explore it, and if it's got good steam, it'll float itself. And if it doesn't have good steam, it'll peter out on its own. But either way, I'm rewarding and not rewarding because I don't like, I don't want to make it sound monetary. I'm acknowledging the idea. I'm acknowledging the contribution and the wanting to try something new, the wanting to pull things through.
Well, and that brings us into this next part of the book, which is decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership is being able to make a decision. So in here he says, George Marshall pointed out that the greatest gift a leader can have is the ability to decide, even if you don't have all of the answers. So one tool that I use at Dr. Contact Lens, it's called the Rice Method, so you can go and Google it. But you look at, you ideate. And when you ideate, you don't try to solve in that moment, because I've been in a lot of product meetings, and a lot of people go into solve mode or defense mode. Ideate mode, we're talking about ideating, Kyle. You can get 140 ideas out. But now, when you come back from the exchange, where are you going to put your attention? And so it's called the Rice Method. So you write out all the ideas, and then you do revenue is the first column. Then you do, I'm going to say this wrong, I'm going to do it, impact, confidence, and ease that you're going to do it. And you score each one from 0 to 10. Then you put the 35s to 40s up at the top, and you start there, and that becomes your Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And some of those ideas will just kind of fizzle out. But the main key here is to not problem solve when you're ideating, but then be able to make a decision with where you're going. So we're on page 50 where it said the greatest gift a leader can have is the ability to decide.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I talk with my fourth year students, and I tell them that for me, and I'm very simple, but the idea of a leader for me is somebody who can make a decision, and that the difference between a right decision and a wrong decision, or a wrong decision and a right decision, is just one more decision. And then I teach my kids that the best thing they can do in any relationship is make a decision over food, right? Where do you want to go eat? I don't know. Where do you want to go eat? What do you feel? Just make a decision, right? At least throw something on the table. I want Mexican. I don't feel like Mexican. Cool, we can check that off, right? Now I want Chinese, right? But the worst nights I have with my wife are the nights where we can't decide on what to eat, and I think we both just progressively get more frustrated with each other. So just make a decision. You can always make a different one, but just start with making one. But I do think that that's assuming that you've gone through a decision-making process, looking at the opportunities, like the Rice Method.
And that's where I think we are right now, is you go to these exhibit halls, you're completely overwhelmed with decisions, and so you come away paralyzed. And I swear to God, at one of these exhibit halls, I'm going to give out a can, and we're just going to kick the can down the road. Ooh. There, we're kicking it again. See you at the next one. Glad we're still here 5 years later. Glad you've let all that, make a decision when you come back. He says, doing nothing can feel comfortable because it's without immediate risk. But in the world of small to mid-sized companies that's got to keep moving, it usually is a recipe for disaster. You got a pressing problem, make a decision, and get on with it. Indecision is often worse than making a wrong decision.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I like that. And I was just looking behind me for my book that has helped me, Brianna. You probably have yours on your desk, the Brianna Rue book. Right, that helps with the decision making. So instead of trying to remember everything, right, and what I loved on that, and I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but towards the bottom of the page, right, it basically says, do I want to move forward, explore this, or am I passing on the opportunity? Not because it's not a good one, just it might not be good for me right now. But yeah, make a decision and then move on, and your life gets so much easier.
Yeah.
I think you may have said this already when I was offline for a little bit, but it comes down to as well, like I think there's hesitancy. I think when I find myself hesitant, it's because I'm trying to figure out how does this exactly work in my practice? Like with any sort of decision, adding on a piece of equipment, software, whatever it is, trying to figure out, hey, how does this work? And then also, like we said before, is it's kind of like an irreversible leap. Do I want to manage the problems that come with this new piece of equipment or software in my practice, and how do I manage those things? I honestly, for me, because I can get, I love looking at everything that's new. I love, that. Like my newsletter is all about
Yeah.
trying to distill down everything that's new, simplify it for other optometrists, and help them make good decisions. Like that's
If you
what
don't
I feel
follow
like I'm.
Kyle, follow Kyle
Yeah,
on
that
LinkedIn,
newsletter's good. I was
everybody.
gonna say, if you're not looking at that
Newsletter
newsletter,
is
And
badass.
that's, yeah. And I feel like that's my calling in life, is just to find the essence of things and distill them down to help people make decisions. So, but for myself in my practice, like I know I'm acutely aware of the pieces of equipment and the software that I don't have. There we go. Another more
Kyle,
fireworks.
Kyle, you are sparkly today, buddy.
uh, I'm acutely aware of everything that I don't have, all the new stuff. And when I make decisions for patients, I'm like, man, I wish I just had that. If I just had that little piece of information, that one other test that I don't have could provide, or maybe that piece of software that if I just, paid another $50 to $300 a month, I would just have that. And that kind of plagues me personally. But what's helped me is essentially just like every single quarter, what we've done the last 2 or 3 years of practice. And this is what he talks about here with, you were talking about it before with Brianna, with the mission, the big, hairy, audacious goal, plus your core values, plus your mini missions, right? Or your mini mountains, is what is one thing that we're going to improve at the practice next quarter? What's the one thing we're going to implement and improve? And that might seem like, well, that's not enough. But at the end of the day, 90 days goes really, really fast. And if you pick actually one thing every quarter, and you do that for the next 2 to 3 years, you do the math. You're going to have 10 to 12 new things at your practice, and you're going to do it really well because you've focused all of your time and attention with yourself and with your team on implementing that one thing over 90 days, right? So I think it goes back to just like what we were talking about with the leap, and also with leadership, and then trying to, what do I do with all this information coming out of Exchange, all these new companies and this new equipment? It's just like, choose one thing and solve it, and then start preparing to launch that one thing on July 1st, right? Like if it's Dr. Contact Lens, just make the decision and say, hey, we're going to launch this I'm going to figure it out right now. And then July 1st, I'm going to launch it with my team. And then for Q3, this is what we're going to work on. This is the only thing that we're actually going to review that's different than just the typical whirlwind type stuff, everyday business stuff at our meeting. Or maybe it's a piece of dry eye equipment, or maybe I'll throw some love out to Red Eval. Maybe it's the Red Eval ERG. You're going to add that to your practice. Start July 1 and do that. And I think it's perfectly consistent with what he's talking about, of just trying to simplify life. There's one concept. I guess I'm going to use this to transition into us talking about the map, because I think the map is like the most amazing thing in this book and many books. But one of the concepts that he's famous for is fire bullets, then cannonballs, right? And so one way that you can decide if you're going to implement one piece of equipment is to fire bullets first and then cannonballs. And what that means is essentially like, don't use up all your cannonballs to find the direction that you're shooting. Fire bullets first to get your target set. And then once you have the target set, then you can use the most expensive things and the most prominent things to or take the biggest risks, I guess, and actions in your practice.
Another thing that you really summed up there well, Kyle, was priority is a singular word.
Mm-hmm.
We have made it not a singular word. Priorities. What are your priorities? And so when you give a team member another priority, what are you taking off of their desk? Because now they're like, oh great, Kyle came back from the exchange. We're gonna implement all this stuff, right? And they're like,
They do
okay,
say that.
let's hope he forgets about everything he just learned.
Uh-huh.
They do it to me too. So priority versus priorities. And this is one of my favorite quotes in the book. It says, if your work is successful, it generates more work.
Mm.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Mm. That's pretty
So when
profound.
you do a good job, your patients should be calling you. They should be giving you wonderful reviews. Your staff should be excited to come to work.
Yep.
So how many times do you see it where a patient will get double booked, both of them will walk in at the same time, and everybody's like, oh my God, how are we going to see 2 patients at the same time? And then you have a no-show, and everybody's like high-fiving that there's a no-show.
I'm
Solve
glad
for
that
the
just doesn't
problem.
happen to me. That made me feel good, Brown. It's just not in my office that happens.
What, that 2 patients show up at the same time, or you get no-show?
No, that they're excited
Oh.
when somebody doesn't show up. Or when you have a schedule that's full, meaning every appointment slot's filled, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we're so busy today." Like, that's what we planned for.
Yeah.
That should be
Right.
the norm, right?
Yes. We want that.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
The phone rings, guys. Answer it.
So
Wow, what a concept.
page 168, worth the price of the book is the map. So what it says, I'm going to just show it to the audience here that they can see it. See, that's the map there. And that is what it's called, What Makes Great Companies Tick. And it's the map developed by Jim Collins. And what he's done is he's essentially, and you can look up, if you just Google jimcollins.com or Jim Collins the map, he has a web page that has further explanation of all these as well. But what's great about the book, how he represents it in the book, is that he's put all of his concepts, his famous concepts, into stages of the business. Right. So basically, when you're starting out, the 2 concepts that you have to really focus on and help you is to cultivating that level 5 leadership, that leadership that we were just talking about. And it's also figuring out first who, then what, right? Get the right people on the bus. And then stage 2 in your business, you need to figure out how to embrace the genius of the and. So really thinking about more nuanced thinking, think less in binary terms about certain protocols and practices in your business. It's confront the brutal facts, and it's also the hedgehog concept. So there's all these concepts that we could unpack, but that's the part that I love the most, because it just, again, it gets to the essence of things, and it puts all of this stuff in kind of one spot. And that's why I feel like this is just a must read for business owners, optometry students, everybody alike.
I like in there how he also says, it's actually a gnarly statistic. I can't remember what page it's on, where companies have that crazy growth, and then they either go one of 2 ways, and a lot of times they go not a good way.
Mm.
Do you remember which part I was talking about?
Let me see. The stages of decline. Was
I
it
think
that?
Yeah.
There's
So like the first step is don't die. The only mistakes you can learn from are the ones that you survive. So if you look back at your life, right, a lot of these are trials and tribulations. And last week for me, like I started off in Tucson where I went to college, where I started my adult life. Then I got to go to the Vision Source Exchange, which I've been trying to get to for a very long time. Thank you, Aaron, Kyle, all the people out there. I was like literally standing in the back crying because I was just like so overwhelmed with gratitude. You just got to stay in the game.
Yeah.
Right. And when you look back, and that's a Steve Jobs quote, is you can always look back and connect all the dots. You can never look forward and figure out where you're going to be. So when I was sitting in Tucson, you're looking at all these paths you could have taken, all the paths we could have taken, and now we all end up in vision care. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what part that was.
Kind of, while you're looking for it, right? There's the quote that says, pray like it all depends on God, but work like it all depends on you, right? I've seen lots of companies in our industry who had early success for whatever reason, and they thought that they were going to continue on that trajectory. One in particular, I remember, I won't name the company, but still young startup company, went to their headquarters, and their CEO was showing me the lavish live edge table that desk he had just brought in, and was spending money like they were going to continue on that projection, and they ended up petering out, and that company's no longer around anymore. So really, it's as you're successful, as you're getting these successes, don't change what got you there, right? Still stay hungry. It's I don't think that the map or any of these things we've talked about is there's no end to it, right? It's just all part of the journey.
Right.
And when you're climbing, do climbing things. When you're riding that slide on the way down, ride that little slide for a little bit, but always stay in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, it's just the distractions with everything. We're more distracted than ever. There's shiny pennies everywhere, and it's more critical to really get your team behind me. One of the things Dan Martell says a lot in the coaching that I'm doing with him is he makes his team work more on themselves than at their jobs. So he goes, I want you externally to do all these things. And he goes, if you think me as your leader have all of the answers, we are effed. And he says it all the time. So that's part of this when you look to, I don't know what, I did that at one point in my job. I was front desk. I was the scribe. I was an optician. I was a patient. But I don't do those now. So when we look back to leadership, right, part of it's giving them autonomy to make a decision. How many times you're like, oh, got to go talk to my pet fish before I make a decision, right? Or I know my team isn't going to do this because I have to get them on board. Well, did you give them the authority to even make the decision? So one of this was changing billing companies. And she waited for me, and I go, Robin, I love you. And I would instantly have said yes to this. And she's like, well, I did tell the girl that, and I did give her our credit card, but she said I had to get your sign off on it. Because the girl didn't know on the other end of the phone that she could make that decision.
Yep.
Right? And so I'm like, I don't know what you need. You've done all of the analysis. Yes, of course, go.
Yeah.
Right? That was cool. That's cool. When your team can make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my philosophy in life as a leader really is to help others become leaders. And part of that, the hardest part is watching the failures and being okay with it. The coolest part is when they succeed, right? But teaching others to do the analysis, look at things, and then decide. And then be accountable for their decisions, because not all of them are going to be okay. But my job isn't to make sure it was always the right decision. My job is to help them progressively get to making more and more right decisions or successful decisions, right? Putting people in opportunities where they can succeed or fail. I don't have the exact number, but I get to help plan the education at the exchange. And we probably had half a dozen, if not more, first-time speakers, first time standing in front of a group. My son was one of them, right? And he's going to listen to this because he produces it. And we rehearsed it. It was great. But you get in front of a group of 80 people, and you start talking 10 times faster than you normally talk. So a 40-minute presentation you get done with in about 15 minutes. Right? And you don't realize things like, your knees start failing you. And every sweat gland in your body decides that now is the time to start sweating. And, all the things that I'd forgotten about, but watch him, succeed through, and then others. It's not just him. I'm teasing you, Skylar, because you're going to watch this. But there were a lot of doctors. This was their first time standing in front of a group. And part of it is just getting thrown into the fire. I mean, I remember the exact first time I got thrown into the fire. I went out and bought a suit because I felt like you had to wear a suit, and I got fancy shoes that hurt my feet because I felt like you had to wear fancy shoes, and it was the most miserable experience of my life. But you have to go through those things, and the failures don't always mean that the world ends, but you learn from them. You progressively keep keep climbing. And so I'm appreciative of those who did it for me, and I like to be able to pay it back. But developing your philosophy as what is, what do you want to be as a leader, I think is important. And then we carry it over into the practice. I try to push my team to make decisions. They tell us a lot of the stuff that we're going to bring in. They tell us a lot of the direction that we're going to take the practice, because they have to be the ones, doing it. They're going to be on the front line, so they should have a voice.
I think it's leading with an
Absolutely.
open hand versus
Yeah.
like closed, like let me pull you, right? That never feels good. So like showing the way,
Yeah.
letting them also do it. And like when I came into the practice, I think one thing that we were so successful with is he let me be me, and he let me fall. He knew half the shit I was going to do was not going to succeed, but he didn't want to crush that. So I think too, as young associates are coming in, it's a critical piece. They're so excited, and they've got new innovative ideas. I had to go from paper records to an electronic medical record. It's like, you decide. I'm like,
Yeah.
like a huge decision that we were going to have to pay for, right? In a good or a bad way. But giving the people around you the authority to do that. I did find the quote in here. It says, and Kyle and I are doing a webinar on this next week about gift cards. So it is charging appropriately for your service. How much are we undercharging all the time, all day long? Cash is like blood or oxygen, and without it, you die. Growth eats cash. This is why roughly half of all bankruptcies occur after a year of record sales.
Mm-hmm.
So go slow enough to develop good management, but not fast enough that it's going to
eat it up.
oak table you.
Oak table you. That's a good one.
Oak table, yeah. Don't
I like
don't
that.
be the oak table. Yeah. I was gonna go back, Kyle, because I think you do a fantastic job of empowering your team. In fact, your team.
Thanks.
Right? She remind me the
Sophie.
Well, I know Sophie, but I'm trying to remember the platform that she got certified. credentialed in.
The Working Genius.
There you go. Sorry, it was on the tip of my tongue. Right?
Yeah.
So Sophie, and I'm sure you were one of the ones who introduced her to the Working Genius, because you talk about it frequently. She took with it and ran, and she was one of the ones who not only led 3 sessions, and led 3 sessions in one of the most difficult formats, because I took out all the screens and projectors, so there were no PowerPoints to put up on the screen. You had to be the voice, the face of everything of that discussion. And from everything I've heard back, she killed it.
Did. Yeah, it was a great opportunity. I was super excited about it too, just because that's one of those moments where, you know that a person has what it takes to do it. You can see that, like, that kernel there of potential, and like, man, if she's just put into that right opportunity, she's gonna crush it. And she's got loads of talent in that area, and knows personalities. I'm a personality profile junkie, and so I like that kind of stuff too. She's equally that, or probably more. So it was pretty cool to
When
watch
do you
her.
give
Watch her
someone a
thrive.
personality quiz?
When do
Like
I?
in the first 5 minutes they meet you?
You know what? I wish I did. I should just be like, hey, great conversation. Thanks for meeting you, but can you just take this quick assessment? I'd like to know you better based upon your Working Genius and Enneagram.
Before we continue, fill this out.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, what we've made some hires recently, and Sophie will be in with me on the interviews and all that. And we know them well enough that we don't actually employ a personality profile at the interview process, but we know how to ask questions to lead to the right type of personality that we're looking for, because we kind of have a good idea, especially with the Working Genius. We know, like, hey, if they're going to be an optician in our practice, they're going to have some competencies or geniuses in the galvanizer area, because they're going to have to be really good at sales and making people feel a little bit uncomfortable. That doesn't make the person that's doing that feel uncomfortable, right? So we know how to ask those questions, and then after that, we do the assessment. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Well, that was cool. We're getting close up on time, but there were two overriding topics that I wanted to hit on because I think that as an optometrist and a practice owner, these hit home to me. The first was, I think it was chapter 6, and I apologize, I'm looking off my notes because I listened to it instead of reading it. But one was good strategy is simple, right? And I think we are experts at making things as complex as humanly possible. I mean, just look
We
at our
call those
contact.
zebras, Aaron.
Gosh, right? I call it the contact lens fit fee structure that usually has like 20 different points, and then you've got to cross-reference an index depending on, are they right-handed or left-handed, or which eye dominance are they or are they buying from me, or are they going to Costco after the, like, it's insane. So we like to make things simple, and I'm serious about the contact lens thing. That's a whole nother argument. We make it so stupid and complex that it's no wonder why people do it with us at all. And then the other was, and it's kind of how he ended the book, right, that the secret to success is hard work. Right? There's no magic bullet. There's no quick fix. It's just showing up every day and putting in the effort.
Yeah, he says it right here, to return to the central theme of the book. It isn't any one thing that makes a company great. It isn't just strategy. It isn't just leadership style. It isn't just vision. It isn't just innovation. It isn't just tactical excellence. It's all of these. And it's all of these done consistently well for years. So in this fast pace, all these companies that do really well, right? Where, okay, that could be me. All that we see are the successes. You don't see all of the failures. You don't see Henry Ford failed 3 times before he made it. And then the one part in the book, he said, that's actually Henry Ford fell and never got back to number 1 because people were wanting different colors of cars.
Yeah.
And he said they can have whatever color they want as long as it's black. And they never reached number 1 again. So I think the theme to all that we've said here is make decisions, stay innovative, especially now. It can't all be on you. And the curiosity factor, go for it. But it does come to focus, and doing great work will lead to more work.
Amen.
I love that. So it's a great place to end. So
Perfect. No, it's a great summer.
I've had enough people tell me they listen to this while they're on the treadmill, and we have just crossed over the hour mark, and so they are now, right, depending on what pace you're going, you're starting to get past 10K territory, and
that's right.
looking at half marathon. But unless you're in Chicago with the they had the St. Patrick's Day run that was 8 miles, I think 8 or 10, I can't remember, but it was a weird distance that
they do.
was weird to train for. An 8, is it 8K or 8? 10, I can't remember. But
8K is 5 miles.
5. Okay, so it was 8 miles. Maybe it was 15K. So, something along those lines. But but anyway, I like ending on a good summary. And I'll be honest, this is the worst time of the year for me to read a book, and this was the wrong book to be reading when I had so many other distractions. So I'm going back and rereading this one just to really sink in, because I agree with both of you. I think this is not just a book that you read and say, that was really cool, I got some takeaways. I think this is a workbook type book.
Yeah, so, great suggestion, Kyle.
On to the next.
Have we decided yet?
I don't think so. We got to throw out some. Or if any listeners want us to read a book, let us know. Find us on LinkedIn. Make a suggestion.
Would love to have you on to help.
Yep.
Discuss through it. I know, Kyle, you had pictures from the exchange of some of our friends who had books as well. So,
yep.
Right. In the spirit of community, we want to make sure it's everybody who wants to be involved can be involved, and help pull us out of kind of our boxes that we all tend to have.
Yeah.
So
love it.
Cool. Well, thank you too. It was awesome hanging out with y'all in Denver. And so glad, Bree, that you're in and part of the Vision Source family and the community. Right, the Kool-Aid's really good over there, but
It was delicious.
great on private practice side and fantastic on just trying to do better and make ourselves better. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Awesome. Till next time.